Hey there, lovely people. Welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammy, and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week is a little bit out of character for me because I feel pretty strongly that sequels or the continuations of series, if I'm not going to talk about all of the books in one video, it doesn't really feel necessary to me. But I feel so strongly about The War of Two Queens, which is the fourth book of the From Blood and Ash series, which I loved in comparison. I loved the first book of. This is the first book release that I have waited for in a series, and I can't express how much of a disappointment this is. So I want to talk about what went wrong. The reason that I don't do videos on follow-up books in series is because if you're not going to read the first book, you're probably not going to read this book. So why would I waste your time and my time filming a video on a second, third, or fourth book in a series if I know if you want to read it, you'll read it. And if somebody wants to have comments on it, they'll leave a comment and be like, yo, what did you think of the second book on that first book video? I cannot imagine not talking about this book in terms of the writing, because there's a whole lot of controversy surrounding it, but none of it is on the writing. And I feel like there is a missing market there. So if you haven't read the From Blood and Ash series, I don't know at this point if I can recommend it to you, but I would say go watch my first video. I will try to avoid as many spoilers as I can, but it's going to be very difficult for me not to spoil the third book at least a little bit, and the second book, because of where we're at this point. All of the things that happened in the second and third book leads up to where we are now, but I won't give any spoilers for most of the content of this book. Now, on to my thoughts. Let's talk about the things that I loved in From Blood and Ash. The dialogue in From Blood and Ash was really, really amazing. I really liked reading the dialogue. I liked hearing the characters talk to each other. I thought all of it was really engaging. I also thought the world building was really well done and unique, even though it clearly took inspiration from various different historical things, but I thought it put it into a unique individual twist. And it was all easy to understand once you got past a certain point. I really enjoyed the characters and their interactions, how their personalities changed as they got to know each other more, and how their interactions, their way of talking to other people, the code switching, all of that was really good. I also really liked the conflict and how there was a clear goal for the story. Now, in direct contrast, let's talk about The War of Two Queens. Specifically, let's talk about the things in the writing that I hated. The conflict of The War of Two Queens was both simultaneously somehow doing too much and not doing enough. There was both way too many conflicts and not enough conflict in the way of each of those conflicts, because there wasn't enough room for there to be actual challenges when you have like 50 challenges presenting themselves in the span of one book. They presented these challenges with such a threat, seemingly, besides them, and once the characters went off to solve the challenge or achieve the goal, it was like super easy. No struggles whatsoever, and the payoff was weak in comparison to the development of the conflict. After a certain point, the threats don't feel like a threat anymore. Once you get 3 different challenges presented with absolutely no strife, or the slightest bit of strife that is really forced but also quite easy. Like the writing of it, the reason why it's there felt forced, but the solution to it felt really easy. Your threats aren't really scary anymore. I know the characters are going to be fine. I have no reason to worry that they won't be, because none of these challenges are actually going to be difficult. The dialogue that I loved in the first book was missing completely. That can have something to do with the tone, given the fact that the first book, they weren't at war, and now they are at war. So witty banter back and forth is not necessarily the most likely thing to happen, but there were points when it was just like, there is no dialogue. We are getting exposition. We are getting exposition that there is dialogue happening. There were multiple multiple moments when the dialogue just stopped and the exposition line of, I told him what happened, was written there. Why aren't we getting dialogue? Why are you telling us that you told us what happened? Why aren't you making it more interesting? Why are you just telling us about it? Why aren't you showing us this? Why are the readers forced to be a part of that moment if it doesn't matter? If the reader already knows what happens, then why don't you just have it come up in dialogue later on that that character got filled in on the information that they missed? In dialogue, show us. Why are you telling us? The characters lost a lot of their consistency, and not in the way that I talked about in From Blood and Ash being that code switching thing. In different situations, they felt like different people because they needed to be different people for those different situations. This was more so like you go from one scene to the next, same characters are in it, but the character that you're following isn't acting the same for whatever reason, and they don't feel like they're talking the same. Like it felt like a different person was writing every chapter. And the main conflict, the main thing that we are fighting, the main thing that we think is going on, the main goal of the story is a lie. The thing that you're fighting against isn't what you're fighting against. The entire story, we are leading up to one final conflict, one final great payout, the reason why these characters are at war. We think we know what it is. The entire time we know what we're fighting for and we know what we're fighting against, and we want to see what we're fighting for beat what we're fighting against, but at the end, what we're fighting for has nothing to do with what we're fighting against. We never knew what we were fighting against, and we never would have known what we were fighting against. If this was the last book in the series, maybe then we would have fought against what we thought we were fighting against. But when we find out what the actual main conflict of the story is, we have not been concerned with the entire time because we had no reason to be concerned with it, it feels like a scam. It feels like we are just being told, hey, you went through this whole book, you read all of this stuff that happened, but none of that actually mattered, and you have to read the next book to see the stuff that actually is going to matter. And I looked it up, and apparently there's supposed to be 2 more books after this one, which says to me that none of them, besides the very last one, are actually going to have the solution to the conflict, because why would they? If she got away with it in this book, why would she make the conflict what you think you're fighting against? Nothing happened that felt worthwhile. Nothing happened that felt like it grew the characters in any way. Nothing happened that felt like they were solving a problem. It felt like they were just fighting against something that didn't exist. Because it didn't. There was no point to anything that they did in this book. None of it mattered. This has been more of a rant than a normal story study, but everything that From Blood and Ash did right, the War of Two Queens did wrong. Everything that I valued about the world from Blood and Ash was destroyed in this book. So I think that this just shows you that you need to tap in to where you started. If you're going to keep writing a story, if you're going to write multiple books in a story, remember where you started. Remember what is that thing that drew your readers in. Because at this point, around book 3, the smut in it got real aggressive. Like, it was just constant, and I am not really about that. I'm not really for that, but I cared about the characters from books 1 and 2 that I was like, you know what? I want to see how this turns out for them. So I will read through this part that makes me kind of uncomfortable because I want to know what's going on with the characters. This book felt like it was exclusively for the people who wanted to read it for the smut. And if that's who your audience is and you want to kick people like me who are there for the story out, that's totally fine because it's going to work. And if you are going to establish something that is going to be very contradictory with a lot of your audience, and you're gonna put it in once your audience is already very invested, they're already 4 books in, and you're gonna present something that may be a major turnoff for a lot of readers and then defend it, maybe you should hint a little bit more clearly up front that that might be where the story is going. If you knew where the story was going, your subtle foreshadowing, maybe it needed to be a little bit less subtle, because I'm a pretty smart reader. I would like to think I'm a very smart reader, but I did not see it coming. And even when people pointed out the moments where you would see it coming, I did not see it coming. Controversy aside, if you like this book or not, if you liked the controversial choice or not, it's drastically different from the first book. And something I think that we can learn from this book is that if you're writing a sequel, and you're not writing as well as you normally do, or you're not putting as much effort into the same parts of your story or factors of your story that you normally do, like dialogue and character development, throw in something super controversial that like 50 to 70% of people will hate and 30% of people will defend, and make that the thing people critique about your story, because people will go for the easy one. People will critique the easy one. I think that this book has so much to be critiqued on. And it's really sad to me because I did enjoy her writing. And now I don't. And I won't be going into the rest of these books because I know I'm just going to be disappointed. But unfortunately, that is all that I have for you today. I wish that I had something good to say about this book, and I just don't. And I feel really bad about it because I really wanted to have something good to say about it. But it's like, I genuinely was just upset that I read it. When I finished, I was upset because there was no payout. There was no reward for me having waited for a book. I haven't waited for a book before. That's a personal experience though. There was no reward for me having read the whole book. There was no payout. And it was disappointing. It was depressing. I haven't read a book. Like, I haven't sat down to read since then. Like, I haven't been having a good time reading since then. Like, it put me into a reading slump, and I didn't realize until just now. It's been like a while. I was trying to cool down about it before filming this video, and I haven't read since then. Wow. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about it. If you noticed any of these slips in the writing, or if you've just been focused on the major conflict, the controversy. Yes, the controversy is there and I have an opinion on it, but the writing just ain't it. It's just not it. That's all I'm gonna say on this, because I could just keep going and I don't think that's good for any of us. But I will see you guys on Tuesday for a writing tip Tuesday.